So these are the fat sources we want to be focusing on because there is strong evidence linking these healthy fat sources to healthier lives.
In New Zealand, and I know in Australia as well, cardiovascular disease is one of our biggest killers. If we've got people who are suddenly downing great big tubs of this stuff instead of what the evidence shows is the healthiest for us, that's a real concern.
When people see that graphic, they'll assume, yeah, I should be having beef every single day. So with the US dietary guidelines, is it likely to influence our Australian and New Zealand guidelines?
Welcome to Healthy Families with Healthy Food Guide. This is a special episode. As you'll see, it'll be a bit different from what we normally have done in the past if you've already tuned into Healthy Families before. So I'm Jenny de Montalk, Managing Editor of Healthy Food Guide. And with me, we've got the lovely Min.
Hi, I'm Min. So I'm the accredited practicing dietitian of Healthy Food Guide.
Min, I just really wanted to pick your brains because recently I was in my local supermarket and I noticed that there was a new section that had beef tallow and ghee and coconut oil in amongst the seed oils. And I was just wondering to myself at the time, could this be something to do with the changes to the US dietary guidelines, which have been a bit controversial? And if anybody hasn't heard about them yet, it's certainly worth looking into. And I was just thinking perhaps they might even be having an influence all the way over here in little old New Zealand or possibly in Australia.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll be talking about today. Also, we've just wrapped up with our Lunchbox Awards judging, and they're in the magazine and online now. And I thought it would be a really timely chance for us to go through what works well for packing a healthy lunchbox, whether you're doing it for work or for school. So it would be really great to get your expert tips on what to do there. So it's an exciting show.
Yeah, so it sounds like today we'll be diving into more about the US dietary guidelines, clearing up some confusion with beef tallow and seed oils, and also let's unpack some healthy lunch boxes. Yeah, so let's get into it. Seed oils is really controversial. There's lots of claims out there saying they're toxic for you. And let's talk about why people are saying that. So seed oils are essentially oils made from seeds. There are sunflower oil, canola oil, or cottonseed oil. And because they contain this fatty acid called the omega-6 fatty acid, people are believing it's linked to inflammation. And inflammation is a huge word people misunderstand and people are really scared of and think a certain food can cause inflammation in our bodies, which is not the case at all. And there are studies showing that consuming seed oils don't cause inflammation at all. And it even lowers inflammation. So it has those anti-inflammatory properties in them. The misconception lies in that seed oils are commonly used in a lot of ultra-processed foods like the packaged chips, the packaged confectionaries, or deep-fried foods. And with those foods, it always comes with high sodium, high sugar, and refined carbohydrates. So the combination of those things are essentially what leads to poor health outcomes. So people are worrying about the wrong things. They are stressing too much about seed oils when it's really not doing that much harm to us.
So just if I understand what you're saying, it's not so much seed oils themselves, it's the problems are coming with the people who are eating too many of the foods that seed oils come in. So the ultra processed foods like maybe cakes, chips, that sort of thing.
And because seed oil is an affordable source of oils, that's why these companies are using them in large amounts in these ultra processed foods to make it cheaper and more shelf stable.
But what I'm really interested in with, on one side you've got this idea that seed oils are the devil. But why things like beef tallow or ghee or coconut oil and those are, I guess, sort of natural. I mean, obviously you'd actually you do have to process stuff to get beef tallow and coconut oil and ghee. In fact, that is processing. But why do people think they're healthier than
that's a really good question.
Seed oils.
They are making a comeback. In the past, people have realized that they're not great for us health-wise and have stopped consuming them so much. But recently it's really making comeback. And people are claiming that it's, like you mentioned, it's a natural source of fat. It's unprocessed. It has these vitamins and minerals in them. And while that may be true, it still contains a high amount of saturated fats, which is usually found in animal fats and some other fats like coconut oil. And there's strong research linking high intake of saturated fats to health conditions. So dietitians, we know that we need to limit our intake of saturated fats. There's just this craze coming up and a demonization of seed oils that's creating the hype around beef tallow. And people are using it for their skin. They're saying it's a good moisturizer. But then skincare experts are saying the particles are actually not hydrolyzed enough to actually penetrate your skin barrier. So it's really not doing anything other than making your skin appear glowy. It's not actually going in and healing that barrier, which is interesting. So a lot of it is marketing and people just assuming that it's going to work because it's rich in vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, okay. I understand that. So so basically there's a really good evidence base showing, and it has been for a long time now, that replacing saturated fats with polyunsaturated fats like you get in seed oils and olive oil and avocado oil and all those, if you don't want to go for seed oils, there are alternatives, but that actually lowers your risk of cardiovascular conditions and a bunch of other conditions, chronic health conditions as well. So I worry a lot. And I know it sort of sounded a bit silly when I'm bringing up, oh gosh, I was at the supermarket and I saw a new section for these things, and why should I care? Well, in New Zealand, and I know in Australia as well, cardiovascular disease is one of our biggest killers. And if we've got people who are suddenly, downing great big tubs of this stuff instead of what the evidence shows is the healthiest for us, so that's a real concern.
It is concerning. So what we want to focus on is actually getting our fats from a variety of sources. We want to limit those saturated fats, but we also want to be getting our fats from healthier sources, the poly and monounsaturated fats, like you mentioned. So it's your olive oils, your avocados, your nuts and seeds, and your fatty fish like salmon. So these are the fat sources we want to be focusing on, because there is strong evidence linking these healthy fat sources to healthier conditions. Yeah, healthier lives.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks for clearing that up for me, Min. That sort of launches me into what started this whole kind of thought train, which was the changes to the US dietary guidelines, or I think they're called the dietary guidelines for Americans officially, I think. Obviously, these are being mired in controversy because we've got RFK Jr., who's already a little bit of a controversial figure. I mean, I don't want to go too much into the politics of it, but what I understand is there have been changes to these guidelines, and one thing is good, it's gone from a very, very big document down to a much smaller document. But what they've also done is introduced this graphic, which is this kind of an inverted food pyramid. If you remember the old food pyramid that went obsolete. I think we've had other simpler variations of that in New Zealand and Australia, but it's kind of brought that back, but it's kind of inverted it, and it's got some weird things on it like butter in the middle of it, and a kind of an emphasis on red meat and things like that, which we've just really is quite different from what the advice has been for the past couple of decades anyway. I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what are dietary guidelines and who sets them normally.
So let's start from the beginning. So dietary guidelines are essentially a bridge between nutrition science and everyday eating. So they're designed to make healthy eating less complicated. And they guide what types of food we eat, how much we should be eating, and also recommendations across different life stages. So varying from infant to maybe like mid or later in life. And most of the time, guidelines are kind of boring. They don't really make headlines unless they're controversial, like the US dietary guidelines, which is interesting how they approached it, honestly. And let's talk about the Australia and New Zealand dietary guidelines. So in Australia and New Zealand, these guidelines are actually developed by independent nutrition and medical experts. And they're based on a totality of evidence, so not trends. They look at a wide variety of evidence. And in Australia, it's regulated by the National Health and Medical Research Council, while in New Zealand, it's regulated by the Ministry of Health. So when we talk about guidelines here, we're not talking about fads, not quick trends. We're talking about population level advice designed to reduce chronic disease risk over decades. So they are trusted, reliable sources of information.
When we talk about population level advice, I just want to make that clear for our listeners. There's a difference between sort of the anecdotes that you hear maybe on social media where they say, well, I have been eating nothing but meat. I've been on a carnivore diet and I've lost all this weight and I've cured my eczema or whatever. So how does population level advice work? How do they, what is that data? What is that evidence?
Yeah, good question.
How's it different from people making those claims?
Yeah, good question. So anything with general health guidelines, they are targeted to the general healthy population. So if you notice influencers or people making claims that a certain diet, like a cabbage diet, has helped them through their health condition, it is very targeted, personalized nutrition, which may not work for everyone just because we know everyone's bodies are so different. We only know what's best for us. And it's not okay to just recommend the same thing to every single person, except when it's the general guidelines. So these are evidence-based, guidelines, tips that we know is healthy for the general public, and that's why we push for them, rather than pushing something that may work for 5% of the population. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, thanks for making that a bit clearer.
That's all good. And you also mentioned that there are so much changes to the dietary guidelines in the past and with the recent one, and the main one being how the whole document is very simplified now. So it used to be over 100 pages, and now they've cut it down to around 10 pages, which is interesting. But I fear they may have oversimplified some of the concepts in nutrition.
Sure.
So what I really like about the new document, though, is the heavy emphasis on whole foods. So as they said, make America healthy again. They are really emphasizing on whole foods and less ultra-processed foods, which is a huge problem in both America and Australia and New Zealand, actually. We are trying to shift away from relying so much on the ultra-processed foods and really feeding our body with whole, nutritious foods. So that's what I really like about it.
Okay, so I'm glad you're looking for positives in them. And what are some of the things you might be a little bit concerned about, or what else do we need to know about these?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the graphic is a bit controversial. So I've actually went through the document, and the tips and I guess, guidelines and text in the documents are really good and detailed, and they're evidence-based, they're solid advice. It's just in terms of the visual, which is the thing most people look at. So not everyone goes to the 10-page document and read through all the little steps, but everyone looks at the graphic. And that's when it's controversial. So because the graphic isn't actually reflecting the tips accurately.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to make it clear, the graphic isn't the same. The information or advice on the graphic, or what you'd interpret from the graphic, isn't actually the same as what is being said in the internal document that is actually providing the guidelines.
Exactly.
Have you got an example, perhaps, of what might be different from what the graphic is versus what the actual advice is?
Yeah. So, when you look at the triangle, the first thing you'll notice is butter is in the middle. And butter is a saturated fat, and it's not a fat that we recommend to consume excessively. It's okay in moderation. We want to limit our intake of saturated fats. So it's interesting to me that they smacked it right in the middle of the triangle rather than having something like avocado or olive oil And they just highlighted it in the middle, which is, it's really interesting. And also protein being placed as one of the main sources of our diet, but they're depicting red meats. So if you notice on the left side triangle, a huge chunk of it is a piece of beef. And so when people see that graphic, they'll assume, yeah, I should be having beef every single day. Yeah, so it's not really depicting the nuance of nutrition. Yes, it's trying to showcase protein, but then it's missing the point that, yes, we do need protein, but we should be eating across a variety of protein, and also the lack of representation of plant-based protein, which we know is really high in fiber. It's protein, it's super nutritious, and it's affordable, budget-friendly source of protein. And it was interesting to see that they just didn't really represent it in the visuals.
Yeah. So presumably, though, what you've got there is this visual of, hey, here's red meat, that's protein. Here's butter in the middle, that's, fats, healthy fats. Which it obviously isn't. But then in the actual internal document, they're not saying you should get all your protein from eating steak every day, are they? And they're not saying you should be loading up on butter every day. So that's where that disconnect is, isn't it? Because there was something that I read where they were saying that basically if you kind of took the interpretation from the graphic and ate like that, you from all those food groups that they're showing there, you would in one meal hit your saturated fat limit for the entire day, and because those limits are in the actual guidelines, so you're being told on the inside this is what you should be doing, this, and that is kind of evidence-based and so on. But then the actual visual, which is what most people will be looking at, is going to be confusing the hell out of people, really.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if our listeners know about the My Plate model, which is essentially a visual guide for healthy eating, and it showcases what your portions of different food groups should look like on a plate. And they've completely changed that into the triangle, which I think confuses people a little, because that's not how we're used to eating. We don't eat on a triangle plate. So,
No.
so I think
Absolutely not.
I miss the My Plate model, actually. I really do like it, and it's something I use with clients. I like to tell them, this is how much certain food should take up your plate. And I think that's just an easier representation of how we should be eating. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Right. Yeah, so the My Plate, I guess it's a little bit, we've got this on Healthy Food Guide or healthyfood.com. We have the My Perfect Plate. And it's basically a plate, and it's divided, and you've got 1/4 is your protein. So your chicken, your tofu, your fish, whatever it is. 1/4 is your starchy vegetables or sort of carbs like rice or potatoes or anything like that. And then half of it is leafy greens, or, all that good stuff that you want making up the bulk of it. That to me seems like the simplest way to convey what we should be eating and the balance that we need to be having. Yes, a little bit from everywhere, but really focusing on those lovely leafy veg, your green veg, and your colorful vegetables, and then a palm size piece of protein, and then a small amount of nice slow carbs, your brown rices, a quinoa, all that delicious stuff.
That to me is just, when I give clients little visual handouts, that's just an easy representation, and people don't get as confused. But it's also interesting to see how whole grains are also not as represented in the visual guide. So they've kind of chucked it down the bottom and made it like a little small section in the US dietary guidelines in the triangle.
Yeah.
So it's only a little small chunk at the bottom that's saying, okay, have your whole grains. So it's a really heavy emphasis on protein now, and they're less on whole grains, even though whole grains are a very nutritious, fiber-rich source of carbohydrate.
Absolutely. I mean, they're essential. We've had reports out, over, consistently, almost yearly over the past 10 years, talking about how eating a diet rich in whole grains helps prevent a whole host of our chronic diseases that are, plaguing our our populations. So it seems very strange. What's the benefit for discouraging people from eating whole grains what's going on there.
Yeah, it's the shift. I think it really connects to how everything is high protein now. Everyone's so focused on a high protein diet that they're almost shifting away from whole grains, which is interesting because I pulled up some stats. And in the US, people are actually hitting their carbs and protein. They're actually not eating enough fruits and vegetables. So, in general, people are getting enough protein. But so, what they need to be focusing on is really getting those nutrition from the veggies and the fruit and the healthy fats. But this whole visual guide is kind of pushing that away and saying just have more protein and saturated fats, which is going the other way.
It's interesting because I think we won't go into too much of it here because, as I said, I don't really want to get into the politics of it. But I would recommend anybody who's particularly interested in this, have a look at who funded the research that was behind it. That's all I'll say on that. So I guess the thing that I really wanted to look at today, Min, was what are the chances? I mean, are we going to be here in New Zealand or Australia? Are we going to be influenced by the US dietary guideline changes? I mean, I kind of wanted to know this because why else have we got this new section in the supermarket here with beef tallow all over it? If you have a body who's in charge that you need to trust, well, basically the government in the States is sanctioning this way of eating. And do we run the risk of it influencing how we're eating here? And if so, what can we do about it? What can we do when we've got all this conflicting advice on what's healthy and what's not?
Yeah, so with the US dietary guidelines, is it likely to influence our Australian and New Zealand guidelines? From a dietitian's point of view, I would say no, it's unlikely to change our own guidelines. Because, like I mentioned before, our guidelines are strictly regulated, they're conservative, and they're evidence-based. One little, visual representation from the US isn't going to change a lot. However, keeping in mind that sometimes it's not the guidelines that change, it's people's perception of food. So they may, we're in Australia, but then we'll see the US dietary guidelines and be like, oh, I can have more beef tallow. And you go to the supermarket and you see the section right there. It's presented to you in an aesthetic way, and then you just grab it. So really, it's down to the consumer level now. So it's less government guideline level. It's about how consumers perceive food and have that knowledge to understand what's healthy and what's not. So if when in doubt, always go back to our own Australian or New Zealand dietary guidelines, because those are the evidence-based nutrition advice. There's so much health misinformation online. Everyone's telling you to do something different. But really just going back to the basics, to put it bluntly, healthy eating is boring. We've known for centuries what we need. We need our fruits and veggies. We need our whole grains. Everyone knows that. And that's why people always try to give you something new, something sparkly to get you excited again. But to be really blunt, healthy eating is the basics.
So it's really about sticking to the basics, following our own advice. We don't need to look over to the US to see what they're doing over there.
Nope.
It's a bit crazy over there at the moment anyway. We've got our trusted dietary guidelines, follow those, and just stick to your perfect plate, or just trying to make sure that you just eat more plants.
Yeah.
Get more veggies into your day, and don't stress about it. It doesn't have to be overly difficult. I like that advice, Min. Actually, while we're on that, I mean, how many people actually follow dietary guidelines, like in the US and over here?
It's hard to say exactly, but in the US, 80% of the population don't meet the fruit and veggie or dairy recommendations with their guidelines.
Oh God!
So 80% are
80%.
80%.
So 20% of people are hitting their targets for fruit, veg.
Yeah, and 50% of calories of what they're eating is actually from the ultra processed foods. So it's the chips, the ice creams, the crackers, the muffins, the store-bought cupcakes. And 70% of the adults in the US are actually overweight or obese, which is not looking good.
Which makes sense. And I think that was one of the arguments for changing the dietary guidelines. But as far as I can tell, that's a moot point because they weren't following them in the first place. And I mean, are they going to follow them now?
Yeah. So if it were up to
Right.
me, I would actually emphasize the veggies, the fruits, just because 80% of the population aren't hitting that, whereas they're eating an adequate
Yeah.
amount of protein. Yeah. So if I
Yeah.
were to recreate the US dietary guidelines, it would be a heavy emphasis on plants and whole grains.
Yeah, finding a way to make plants sexy. People eat more of the
It's tough out
Yeah.
here. It's tough out
Getting-
here.
yeah, getting some of the gym bros, eating celery or something. We need to bring Popeye back.
We do. We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to make eating veggies trendy again. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, make veggies great again. Well, thank you, Min. That's really interesting, and that's answered a few of my questions about those dietary changes. Now let's move on to something a bit lighter and a little bit more practical. Obviously, we've just wrapped up with our lunchbox awards, so we've got lunchboxes on the brain. The kids have gone back to school. Work is back on. It's the beginning of the year. We want to do everything right. What makes a healthy lunchbox? What are the components that make a perfect lunchbox?
Yeah, lunch is actually the meal I look forward to in a day just because it breaks up the day nicely and it just gives me that little energy boost to continue the rest of my day. And a healthy lunch to me is something that gives me a good amount of energy. It keeps me satisfied and it also prevents the 3 p.m. slump. We all know the 3 p.m. slump. You're trying to get through work and then you just feel that drop of energy. And with a good, nourishing lunch, you can actually prevent that. Yeah, and so 3 main things I look for when it comes to lunch. First of all, carbohydrate, because we know it gives us the energy, and ideally we would go for a whole grain, so something like whole grain bread or brown rice or a whole grain wrap would be a good option for carbs. And looking at my lunchbox, the second thing I would look for is protein. Do I have a source of protein in there? So something easy to prepare for lunch would be tuna or chicken or tofu or legumes. Like we mentioned, the plant-based proteins are really good sources of protein. So these are your chickpeas, your legumes, your beans, and you can often find them in supermarkets in little cans. So they're such a convenient source of protein that you can just grab them and chuck them in your lunch bag and have chuck in a salad to add a bit more fiber and protein. And it's just so good for you. Plant-based protein is so underrated and it's something I always recommend to people. Yeah, do you have
Cheap too, because to be honest,
cheap.
it's so expensive at the moment. I'm eating plant-based protein pretty much all the time because I can't
so
sort of
good.
justify the expense.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's so good for you. What's your favorite plant-based protein?
Tofu. I'm nuts about tofu, and then tempeh. I've just been experimenting with lots of different ways to cook with tempeh, and so I'm steaming it and marinating it, and it's just so good. You can crumble into salads or fry it in wedges, and you can have it hot and cold. And tofu is the most versatile
Yes, I love
protein
tofu.
I've ever come across.
Yeah,
And other than that, it's always lentils. I always chuck lentils into salads, and
so
yeah.
good.
Yes. How about you? What's yours?
I am really loving edamame at the moment. So they're really good. They're little young soybeans, and they're green, and they
Beautiful.
often come in the frozen pack or on the shelves. They're so good, and you chuck them on your poke bowls or just have it with your rice bowls, and it just tastes amazing. Yeah, a little crunchy as well.
Yeah, and the kids love them too. We can put them in lunch boxes for kids, and you can just get the potted ones and just put them in there, and they can nibble away on them.
Yeah, how good. So second last thing I would look out for is some color. So always having some plants, some veggies in my lunchbox. So I like to aim for 3 colors. So if it's a stir fry, I would like to buy, in the frozen section, you can get the Asian veg mix, which is the broccoli, carrots, cauliflower, I believe. So having that color and the variety of veggies gives me just a range of nutrients. So it's complicated if you want to think of what nutrients or what vitamins this veg has. So let's think of it in a way that we're aiming for colors. So aiming for at least 3 colors.
So is that why we say eat the rainbow?
Yes.
Are you saying that each color has a different benefit.
Yes, 100%. And that's just an easy way to think
Cool.
about it, just because we don't want to stress about, oh, does this have vitamin K? Does it have vitamin A? And, you're stressing about what functions each vitamins are. We don't want to be doing that all the time. So if we focus
No.
on getting, a variety of colors of fruits and veggies in our diet, that's a great way to just get in all the vitamins and minerals that our body needs without stressing about it too much. So it's
Love
not
it.
just a saying,
That's so easy.
it's actually an evidence-backed advice. Yeah, eat the rainbow.
Brilliant.
How good.
Brilliant.
So the last thing I would add
Are
to
you-
my lunchbox is also some healthy fats, just because fats are something that keeps us fuller for longer and satisfied throughout the day. And I always like to have it with lunch, so it keeps me full until maybe snack time or dinner time. So I love going for either like half an avocado with my meal, or a drizzle of olive oil with my salad, or even just like some chopped up nuts sprinkled over whatever I'm having. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really like if you're sort of unsure about what's a healthy fat and what's not, and understandably, because there's so much confusing information out there at the moment, a healthy fat is what you're really looking at is like, avocados, nuts and seeds, and your olive oils, your avocado oils. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes it easy.
Mhm.
You just make a dressing, top your salad with
Yeah.
some seeds or nuts, and then you're getting what you need. Peanut butter, I suppose, if you wanted to have a smoothie, putting some peanut butter in it.
Yeah, and oftentimes people are afraid of fats because they feel like, oh, it's just so high in calories. But the thing is, the healthy fats are good for you. They're good. They prevent health conditions as well, and they're good for heart health. And also, they keep you fuller for longer, which prevents you from over snacking later in the day. So it's not always about like keeping your meal as low calorie as possible. We want to have a meal that nourishes us so that it keeps us satisfied throughout the day, and then we don't end up having intense sugar craving later in the day or excessive snacking and
Sure.
reach for the nearby unhealthy bag of chips. Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that makes sense. So, is that what they mean when they say something's nutrient dense? Are they talking about like you get a lot of nutrient in that, and it will keep you satisfied, and it
Yes.
will stop you reaching for that easy
Yes.
fix later on?
Yes,
That you
exactly.
might not be the best choice.
Yeah, and oftentimes whole foods are the ones that are the most nutrient dense. So if we focus on having more whole foods and that nourishes us, yeah, we'll be satisfied fuller for longer. And that's a healthy eating pattern.
So, what's the difference between? I mean, you've just described, I guess, what constitutes a healthy lunchbox. But is there a difference between what we need to be packing for kids versus, say, what we might need to pack for ourselves for work or for uni?
Yeah, so what packing lunchbox for kids versus adults have in common is that they both need to be balanced, nourishing, and enjoyable, because everyone wants to enjoy their little lunchbox. As well,
That's important.
yeah, so enjoyment is a big thing. And for kids, the most obvious difference would be portion size. Smaller portions, kids obviously have smaller bodies. They don't need as much energy or calories as adults do. So smaller portions. And I like to think of packing kids' lunchbox with Go, Glow, and Grow foods. So Go foods are the ones that give the kids energy. These are your carbohydrates. The Grow foods are your protein sources. So having that protein to help them grow up. Yeah, so muscle building. And then your Glow foods, which is your foods rich in vitamins and minerals. And these are your fruits and vegetables. Yeah, so Go, Grow, and Glow.
Just a question on that. I know, first of all, I know that a lot of parents are going to be rolling their eyes and going, I'll just give them anything that they'll eat because I'm so sick of getting the lunch boxes home at the end of the day and nothing's been eaten and I don't know what they're even eating at school. How can you kind of introduce healthy food and make them like it? I mean, does it, what have you got any tips on that?
Yeah, well,
so frustrating.
I know it is. Picky eaters. Well, there are several ways. So first of all, if your kid is really picky and not enjoying the healthy foods, let's say you're trying to get your kid to have a broccoli and you're filling up all the lunchbox with new food items, which is all the healthy like whole grain bread, or there's things they normally wouldn't go for. and you've packed up a really beautiful lunchbox for them, and you come back home, they come back home, and you open it up and it's untouched. So how we want to approach that is we want to still include the safe foods or their favorite foods. So introducing these healthy foods one at a time rather than switching up the whole lunchbox. So if they're enjoying, a cheese toasty at the moment, yeah, have that cheese toasty, but also having that broccoli on the side, some carrot sticks, just having that variety and that choice. So they'll open it every day and see it there, and eventually they'll start getting curious and trying it, or experiment with different cooking methods on how you cook that veg. So if they enjoy a little bit of cheese, it's so fine to bake them with a little parmesan, with broccoli with a little parmesan, just because they enjoy that flavor.
I guess like a lot of kids, it's all about texture for them. So we talk about a healthy food guide that go for whole grain bread. Obviously, that's the best option. But it might be tricky to get a kid to go from white bread to whole grain bread. But there are now varieties that are sort of still that soft bread, but they've got extra fiber in them.
Yeah.
That kind of a bit more palatable for kids. Or the trick that I had with my daughter is I used to cut shapes out of the sandwiches, so a heart or a teddy bear or something like that, and they're much more interested in eating something that's cute, or and you can use cookie cutters to do that. So you make the sandwich and then you can cut for teddy bear shapes or whatever it is, and they're way more likely to eat something cute. So you could try doing that.
So making the foods a little bit more fun for them to have. It's almost like playing a game. So it gets them interested in eating it. Yeah, I love that. I love that tip. So good. So a lot of times kids, they go to school, they don't have a fridge to put their foods in. So it's important to have an insulated lunchbox and having an ice pack inside. Or if you don't have an ice pack, it can also freeze juice poppers or yogurt pouches.
Oh, yeah.
So that's
a good idea.
That's like a DIY ice pack, and just chuck it in the lunchbox, and by the time it's lunchtime, it's probably defrosted already. So it kept your lunch cool until lunchtime, and then now you can have it like as a cold snack.
Then it's ready to eat. Perfect. Oh yeah, or their drink bottle perhaps. You could freeze that as well, so they can have a nice cold drink later on. So what I'm understanding is sort of like a perfect lunchbox for a kid might be something like a nice sandwich with a bit of a protein filling in there. Are we looking? Or do we want some protein in there and maybe? Okay. Yeah. Most kids. No, it stinks. You can't have tuna. But yeah, it's tricky because you can't have the nut butters. But maybe hummus is a source of protein. Do you think?
Hummus is a good one. Hummus is a source of protein as well as fiber, and it's just, if it helps your kids enjoy more veggies, it's such a win.
Yeah. Oh, great. And then I'm thinking like maybe veggie sticks to have on the side, like cut up carrots and those little cherry tomatoes, and you've got those tiny cukes. I think they always win in our lunchbox awards. And then maybe fruit. So sometimes kids will eat fruit more if it gets cut up, in my experience. So having some fruit and maybe some yogurt to dip it in, or one of those, like you say, get those squiddy yogurts and freeze them. I did work with a dietitian a few years ago who wasn't really very keen on those sucky yogurts because she thought that it wasn't very good for the or for dental health. But hey, if it means a kid is going to eat the yogurt, it's that whole thing of making it fun again. I don't think we need to stress too much about that. Good. And what else? So maybe like cheese, if your kid likes cheese, those little Baby Bell cheeses.
Yeah, cheese is a great. Yeah, cheese is a great option as well. So just thinking about having a good source of carbohydrate, protein, cheese would be a good protein, and some veggie sticks, like you mentioned, which for fiber. So a colorful mix of veggies and fruit. So cutting them up, like you said, would be a really good option to just make it easier for them to snack. And oftentimes when it's there, when they're talking to their friends, they'll just grab it and start snacking on it.
What about if your kid's not really the sandwich kind of kid? Can you use those rice, like the corn thins, those whole grain corn thins? Is that... okay for kids to have?
for sure. Some corn thins with perhaps like some spread of cottage cheese or a little cream cheese, and having some cucumber
Yep.
on top, or some
Nice.
or some chopped cherry
Yeah.
tomatoes. Those are a great option as
Yeah.
well.
Well, so because you can also pack those separately so they can just kind of
Yeah, so they
assemble
don't get
them.
soggy.
Because you get those little bottles, yeah, so they don't get
Yeah.
soggy because it's nice and crunchy. And again, and on that, I suppose popcorn, would popcorn be an
Yeah.
appropriate thing for kids to
Popcorn is
take?
so good. Yeah, but just be mindful of the little, sometimes popcorns are sold with a bit of like too much sugar or butter, so always go for the original, like
Yeah.
slightly salted ones. So those are really good
Yeah.
sources of fiber, and it just keeps you fuller for longer because it takes you a long time to crunch through as well. Yeah, really
Sure.
good.
Yeah. So and I'm assuming like with the dairy, it's also good to have because kids need the calcium for their
Mhm.
because their bones are growing. So
Yeah.
you're laying down your bone density. Is that right?
Yes. Calcium is
Cool.
absolutely essential for kids' growth. So having a little milk box or some yogurt, like you mentioned.
What's the difference? So for a adult's lunchbox, what are the key differences?
Well, something I would prioritize in adult lunch boxes are a good source of protein and fiber, because oftentimes it's carb heavy. So having that balance, again, going back to balance, obviously portion sizes would be slightly larger and it depends on your goals. Someone who's training a lot, going to the gym a lot, might have a bigger portion of lunch, and that's so fine. So context really matters when it comes to adults. Or if you know that you're just working today and you're pretty much on your desk the whole time, you wouldn't need as much calories. That's so fine. It's all about portion control. And yeah, so, and having that good balance of meals and snacks throughout the day as well. And we recently just wrapped up our Healthy Lunchbox Awards. So go to healthyfood.com, and then there under awards toggle, you can click on it and you'll see our free list of healthy products, which are handpicked by our dietitians. And these are the healthy products that you can trust are nutritious and healthy for you, that you can just grab, put in your lunchbox and have it as a snack or incorporate into your lunch. Yeah.
What are you having for lunch today, Min?
Well, I actually meal prepped over the weekend, and I prepped a Korean rice bowl. Have you heard of bibimbap? It's a colorful rice bowl where I saute some zucchini, some carrots, some spinach, and then have some lean mince as well. And just put it all on top of some rice, and then I drizzle like a spicy sauce over it. And that's just a great way to hit all the colors. Like there's 3 colors right there with my protein and
Yeah.
my carbs, and a little bit of sauce for flavor, for enjoyment. How good is that?
So nice. I do it with an egg on top and
Oh, yes.
daikon and spinach and yeah, so good.
So
Love
good.
it.
What are you having for lunch?
One of my good question. I haven't even got any plans. So actually, while I'm thinking about that, I might have to buy something. So have you got any tips for if you have to buy lunch if you've like been like me and not planned anything?
Yeah. So ideally, we would want to cook most of our meals because that's just an easy way to control our eating. But it's so fine to have to buy lunch. And with that, it comes with flexibility. So understanding that it's okay if not all your meals are perfect. We always want to aim for the better option. We don't have to always have the best option, but it's always thinking, what can I do better? So, like I mentioned, the theme of today's podcast is really balance. So, looking for balance and not perfection. So, when you're looking at the menu, just picking the one that has a good source of carbs, because of protein, and the colors. If you've run out of options and you bought a meal that doesn't have enough veggies, maybe it's head to the shops and get a box of cherry tomatoes or some cucumbers to snack on
Nice.
to kind of add to it. So you don't have to stress about your meal not having enough nutrients, just because you have the whole day. Like one meal is not going to ruin your entire day.
So you don't have to worry about it all being one meal. If
Yeah.
you think about, okay, I didn't really have many vegetables at lunch, so if I have them in my snack later on,
Yeah, spot on.
that's fine.
Spot on. In a perfect world, we want to have balanced meals, but on the chance, like on off chance where you don't have balanced meal, that's so fine. So it's always shifting the mindset to thinking, what can I add to it, just to make it a bit more nutritious and to hit that little bit more of a balance. And then oftentimes, if I know I'm going out for lunch and it's not somewhere with a lot of healthy options, I'll make sure I have a really good breakfast, just so I know, yep, I'm nourished for the morning. I don't have to stress too much about lunch. And that's a good way to think about it.
A lot of that restaurant food or cafe food can be a bit high in sodium.
Yeah.
What do we need to look for there?
Amount. Yeah, so generally you want to aim for, well, not every restaurant has the sodium level listed on the menus, but we want to aim for less than 700 milligrams of sodium per meal. But that's so fine if you don't. There's little strategies you can do to be more mindful of the sodium amount. Like, for example, if you were to have a soupy noodle dish, being mindful of not drinking the soup is a good way to manage your sodium intake.
I was going to say, so are those the sort of culprits? What are we looking for? Are there main culprits? Like, I mean, I guess maybe soy sauce is obviously a bit high in sodium, so you might want to be not using too much of that. Or what would we be looking for?
So anything like really sauce heavy tends to be higher in sodium, just because sauces are high in sodium. But also dressing, sometimes if you could ask for a dressing on the side, and you can also control the amount of dressing you put on your meal, would be a good way to control that sodium amount. So sodium is also really high in a lot of ultra processed foods. So maybe when you have two items and one is like a schnitzel, which is a processed kind of meat, and one is a grilled chicken, going for the grilled chicken is a better option, just because we know that the sodium amount is less, it's less processed. So just making the comparisons and making the healthier options would be a good way to decrease the sodium amount you have. Yeah.
Okay, that's really good advice. And why does it matter how much sodium we have?
So sodium is linked to our blood pressure, and obviously we want to keep our blood pressure in check. So we don't want to have too much sodium, because too much sodium is going to increase our blood pressure, which is going to lead to an array of health problems, which we want to avoid. Especially if you have some kidney problems, we have to be mindful of the sodium content you're having. And it's just general health. It's always good to be mindful of the sodium you're having, just because if you have a sodium heavy meal, you will find that you don't feel your best after anyway. So we want to avoid that.
And feeling good is important, and that's really one of the main things we eat for.
Absolutely.
We want our food to make us feel good.
Enjoyment and feeling good.
Well, thanks, Min. That's been really informative. If you want to find out about any of the topics today, or anything to do with healthy eating, head over to healthyfood.com or pick up a copy of the latest issue of Healthy Food Guide magazine. Have you got any parting words for us, Min?
I think I'll just keep it simple, stick to the guidelines, and aim for balance, not perfection.